He's a professor of sociology at the University of Johannesburg, the director of the Centre for Social Change. He is also a member of the Marikana support campaign. Thank you for being with us, Professor.
Pleasure.
You were on the ground in Marikana in days afterwards, interviewing people, and you stumbled across a lot of evidence in what's now called Scene 2. Just describe how it unfolded, what you were hearing, and how it started to sink in, how serious this was.
Yes, we were in Marikana on the Saturday. The massacre occurred on the Thursday. I read newspapers on the Sunday and was very concerned because none of the newspapers reflected the views of the workers themselves about what had happened. So I went back to Marikana on the Monday, and together with two assistants we interviewed many of the workers, and they directed us away from the famous mountain and the place where the killings were televised in the other direction, towards a place that came to be known as Scene 2. We called it the killing koppie. I think it was quite a good name for it, really, because what we discovered there was blood, lots of blood all over the place, parts of people's clothes, and these letters about 30 centimetres high in yellow, ABC and so on. And we surmised correctly, as it turned out, that these were the places where people had been killed, and there were 17 people who died there. So we talk about a massacre. In a sense, it's two massacres, the televised one and then this horrible event at Scene 2 where the police simply encircled the workers, moved in and shot them in coldly. It was really quite a horrific thing. It comes back to my mind as we talk, in fact. It was terrible finding all the blood. Because
a lot of these mine workers, people have surmised that they were unarmed at the time, so possibly hunted down, put in little confined spaces and shot at very close range.
Well, at this one place, I mean, there was no evidence at all that the workers were armed, and all of the evidence showed that the police were responsible for this. And in fact, the police didn't even put up a serious defence at the Farlam Commission, and it was just accepted by the Farlam Commission that the police were responsible. I mean, it was regarded by the evidence leaders as a direct attack on the workers, a kind of massacre. Yes, it was horrific.
Given the evidence that we have, do you agree with those who say it's been 5 years of injustice? There's enough to go after people who were complicit in this, and we haven't?
I don't think there can be any doubt about that whatsoever. And we've now had the investigation of IPID, the Independent Police Investigative Directorate, and they say very clearly to the National Prosecuting Authority that these are 72 names we're giving you, the names of 72 police officers who you should consider for prosecution, and nothing has happened. Not a single person has been prosecuted. So all of it is sitting now with the National Prosecuting Authority, and they're doing nothing about it. And that's the very simple nub of the problem that we now have now.
You've looked at some of the individuals. The National Police Commissioner at the time, Ria Piega.
Yes.
She did eventually go quietly, but is there enough there? Should she be behind bars even?
Well, it's certainly clear that she should be prosecuted. Whether the court finds her guilty is another matter. But the evidence against her is very, very strong indeed. And it comes not just from Farlam, but this Commission of Inquiry, investigation, set up by the President, the Classen Commission. And it's very clear, you should read Classen. Unfortunately, this document has not been made public. The President has been sitting on it since the end of last year. I've got a copy, perhaps you've got a copy. Many people in the media have got copies of the Classen report, and it's very clear indeed that she should be sacked. There's no mincing of words whatsoever. 3 reasons are given why she should be sacked.
Do you have any reasons for the lack of accountability that we've seen?
Well, I don't know. I mean, clearly there is a delay going on, and I hold the President responsible for that. In the end, he is the person in charge of the government. He can instruct the Minister of Police, and the Minister of Police can deal with the problem. But we have to hold the President responsible for this lack of justice of a very basic kind for these people who have suffered so much.
You've been very critical of the Deputy President as well, Cyril Ramaphosa. Are you not vaguely sympathetic? You know, I know he used that language, he called for concomitant action, but people had been butchered in the days leading up to this, and surely he did not intend for what happened.
Well, I thought you might ask me, so I thought I'd better go back and see what Mr. Ramaphosa said in Parliament, and I transcribed what he said verbatim. He says, "What I was dealing with, the intervention I was seeking to make, was to try and stop further killings from happening. And for me, this was sparked off by the killing of the 10 people who had died earlier, and the killing of those people had happened in the most gruesome manner." That's what he says. Now, the problem is that he intervened on 2 occasions. He intervened once on the Sunday, which was the 12th of August, when he phoned the Minister of Police, and it was that led to the ramping up on a very massive scale of the police presence. Then, there were 2 people dead then, not 10. There was a point when there were 10 people dead when he did intervene again, and on that occasion it wasn't to get more police there. There were 800 police there already. The purpose of his intervention, very clear from the emails, was to win an argument that the reason for the police action was that it was to stop further bloodshed. The bloodshed had happened. What he was concerned with was to win an argument that this is no longer about a mixture of negotiations and police. It's police only. We have to have a police intervention here, end of negotiations. And my argument is that had there been negotiations, and clearly Mr. Ramaphosa was a very experienced, very credible negotiator, we could have avoided the bloodshed.
There seems to be a lot of mixing the ties between politicians and Lonmin and the politics in the police. 5 years on, has anything changed in your opinion?
Well, at a physical level, I was at Marikana today, very little has changed. People are still living in informal settlements, very little by way of services, and I find it appalling, really, that Lonmin have been through this, and they really haven't changed the conditions of the people that they're employing to any significant degree. And clearly we still have a situation where Mr. Ramaphosa, who was a director at Lonmin, no longer a director, of course, he withdrew from that, but he's still able to make these statements and for people to accept them without really interrogating what happened there at Marikana.
What do you believe then needs to be done overall to put things right? How far do we go? Does the state say we were complicit, we are going to compensate, you know, it was under our watch? How far do you go?
Well, clearly they have to compensate the widows. They've said that they will do, but they haven't done it yet. So that would be the first step towards dealing with this injustice. The people who suffered either as widows or because they were wrongfully arrested or because they were injured by the police, these people must receive proper compensation straight away. I can't see any justification for allowing this to drag out now. The real problem I think that the government has is that they do recognise that at some level they are complicit in what happened, and that's clearly the case with the President as well, who was well aware of what happened at Scene 2 because he read the full report from Ria Prieka. And one of the reasons why the Klassen Commission wanted her sacked is because she amended the report for the press. So that's why she's being criticised. Now, the President saw the full version, so he knew what happened at Scene 2. So I think he has to also be held accountable for the way in which this distortion was allowed to be presented to the world.
You're echoing what an earlier guest said, Rihad Desai. In finality, from a research perspective, I was interested in some of the research looking at the garnishee orders, for instance. So the mine workers were losing so much of their salary. There was little incentive to go to work. From what you've seen, is there anything we can take away? Can other companies learn? Can we use it to heal somehow?
Well, I think there were good reasons why people went to work, by the way. I mean, garnishees or not, you've still got a family to feed and working in the most appalling conditions.
But if you're losing it all on paying back your debts and left with very little.
You still have to survive. And people are working under terrible conditions. We interviewed people who are working 12 hours a day, they went home badly injured, and this is, I suspect, is still going on. I think the main thing that other employers have to take from this is that you have to negotiate with workers. If they're on strike, whether it is a protected strike or not, you have to listen to workers and negotiate with them, and at all costs avoid bloodshed.
All right, thank you so much for your time this evening. Professor Peter Alexander from the University of Johannesburg.